Tokyo just held one of its 2 annual fountain pen ink shows. When I was making this video, it was turning out to be something like a "this is the crowd and this is what I got" kind of video. So I re-edited it to hopefully include some of the fountain pen and ink culture that exists here in Japan. So first we'll start with Bungu Joshi. Bungu Joshi is a stationery promoter. Last year here in Tokyo, they held Japan's largest stationery show where 38,000 people attended. That, of course, included me, so I'll link it up here in the corner to the video I did on it. Bungu Joshi literally means stationary young lady, and it especially appeals to young ladies. A majority of the attendees to both the stationery shows and ink shows are overwhelmingly women. The next word is Inkanuma. Inku is just the Japanese pronunciation of ink, and Numa means swamp, so Inkanuma is ink swamp. Probably the best way to think of this word is ink fever. These young ladies buy fountain pen ink not only to use in fountain pens, but to swatch with glass pens, brushes to use in their art, to keep extensive ink journals. The ink itself is the draw, not so much the pen, unless we're talking about glass pens. I'll cover glass pens in my Inkanuma Part 2 video next week. So it's very telling that Bungu Joshi sees Inkanuma as such an important phenomenon that they actually made a Bungu Joshi Inku Numa show. This is a very specific kind of fountain pen ink show. There are many stationery stores throughout Japan that carry their own ink. They do a collaboration with Sailor or maybe some other company, but they have their own color and their own ink for their stationery store. For instance, many of you may know of Bungu Box, and they have their own Bungu Box branded ink in its own kind of bottle. But Bungu Box is an exception as they will sell their ink online. Most of these stationery stores do not sell their ink other than if you actually go to their store. They explained that the reason they do this is for people to come to their area of Japan and to promote tourism in that area. So Bungu Joshi Inku Numa is a show that gathers up all these inks from these different places, so you don't actually have to go to those stores, and has it all in one show. This is different from the other annual ink show, Itoya Stationery Store's Ink show. That show is just a straight up ink show from all the different companies all over the world. For instance, last year they had inks from Vinta, Diamine, Ackerman, for a total of over 1,000 different kinds of ink. I'll link up my video in the corner here from last year. This year's Bungu Joshi Inku Numa was a little different than last year's, partly because of the COVID thing, and then partly because they've kind of incorporated more stationery items, which made it a lot more fun. Like last year, you had to buy tickets ahead of time for one of 3 time slots over a period of 3 days. You were assigned a number, and that was the order you were allowed to go into the show, which cut down on the line. At the entrance, you picked up your shopping basket along with a map of the show. You also got this Bungu Joshi Haku Inku Numa original ink book, which is basically a way that you can log inks that you tested out. Many people took time to seriously fill this out, and they gave you this roller ball. This was all included in the price of the entrance fee, which was about $14. Some of my pen friends found the fact they gave us roller balls instead of fountain pens like last year rather chilling, but I've loosened up and it's okay. As I've said, they added a lot more things to this ink show. This is a tin of candy that has the Bungu Joshi logo on it. I got it mainly because I wanted to empty out the candy and put like converters in there or something. That was indicative of this year's show. There were so many extra interesting things that were pen related, but not quite exactly pens or ink. Their logo's pretty cool. It has a stylized sky tree on it, crayons, ink, protractors, fountain pens. It was a pretty cool little box. Next was these little cute notebooks that were hidden in these cardboard boxes. Here you can see the display of the different kinds of notebooks you can get, and then there's a pile of them hidden in little cardboard boxes, and you pick one, not knowing which one you're going to get. It's kind of like a game and very, very Japanese. It looks like I got the little life notebook. It was little stands like this that kind of lent the whole show a kind of carnival or fair feel. It made it a lot more fun. Last year from Kawasaki Bungu I got this ink that was inside of a sake cup. So this year I got their sake cup with 4 samples of different kinds of ink. These are their sheer inks. This is a prime example of the kinds of inks you can buy at this show that you really can't get unless you actually go to the store. Also from Kawasaki Bungu is this really interesting ink called Amabiye. Amabiye is a mythical yokai, or a Japanese monster. In this case, it's a 3-legged or 3-tailed mer person. Legend has it that this monster arose from the sea and predicted 6 years of great harvest and also 6 years of a pandemic. However, this monster says if you show my picture to someone, they will be protected from the disease. Some manga artists kind of revived this during COVID, and now there is edible sushi, cookies, embroideries, and charms that have Amabiya on it. Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare has adopted Amabiye as their public safety campaign mascot against COVID. It's kind of an insipid, dry blue. So here you see the picture of Amabiya and you are protected from COVID. My videos are actually worth something. But seriously, wear your masks. Penbox, which is from Niigata on the west side of Japan, was selling their line of Sessai inks in paper bags. This is the first time I've bought an ink strictly on looking at its chromatography. On initial use, this looks like a straight up brown ink, but it's got a crazy chromatography. It's a pretty neutral brown, but it shades into a velvety green sheen. And when diluted with water, it's a chromo shader with both pink and green tones to it. I've never seen a store sell their inks with chromatography, but this ended up working out really well for me. Fonte had a stand where you bought a pen body that came complete with a converter, and then you picked the color cap that you wanted. There was a variety of colors of caps, and then they had matching ink cartridges to the caps. I was at the show with Jacob from Fudafan, and he kept saying, "Elisa, it's just a Jinhao." And I was like, wait a minute, I want to play. This is the fun part of the show that was kind of like a fair. I got the complete pen along with a pack of cartridges for about $8. So here I have the pen body with a blue cap. And now I gotta figure out how to use this cartridge. Let's see if I can figure out the right end to stick in there, and yes, I did it. I think I was about 12 the last time I used a cartridge. and it's a color of ink that basically matches the cap. It was pretty fun. Yotsuba Shoten, which is in Shizuoka, sold this ink called Toro, and this pink glittery ink called Orihime, which is Princess Ori. That was the ink dripping down the screen at the beginning of the video. At last year's Bungu Joshi's large stationery show, I got this little ink journal by Kamiterior. Kamiterior is a specialty paper store, and they have a few things for sale on jet pens. What I was excited about this year is this printed blotting paper. Both the pink and white are blotting paper, but they have a pretty cool pattern on it. I've never seen anything like this before. So now I have blotting paper in all my A5 size journals. What the Kamiterior people were most excited about were these notepads with sheer patterned paper in them. They're a kind of vellum-like paper that have patterns on them. This one is of dogs, and I have another one with stationery products on it, and it is totally fountain pen friendly. It does not bleed through to the other side. However, when you hold it up to the sunlight, you can see through the paper and distinctly see the pattern. Apparently, this is their newest item. They also came out with this ink flip kind of ink swatching card made of very high quality paper. Each of the swatch cards looks like an ink bottle, and you can kind of fill in the ink or whatever information you want on both the front and the back. This is the name of the company, Kamiterior. Their booth was pretty cute, and it really showed off fountain pen ink swatching. Here's a close-up of how they used the ink swatch cards. Some of them they took off the ring and then used a rubber band to attach the card to the bottle of ink. Tag Stationery from Kyoto was there. They had these little wrapped boxes of teeny tiny bottles of ink. Here you can see my pen for comparison. Each bottle had a swatch of the color on the cap, and the bottle held 5 milliliters of ink, kind of like little samples. The ink powerhouse Nagasawa was there, and they really epitomized this year's change in Inkanuma. There were all kinds of stationery products besides their huge catalog of inks. Here you can see some hankies they had for sale, and their vast assortment of monogatari inks. In Japan, everybody carries hankies. It used to be because they never had any paper towels in their public restrooms, but it's almost a cultural thing now. Of course, I got a couple. This one has a bottle of red ink and an envelope with a heart sticker on it and a fountain pen. Both hankies were wrapped in the iconic Kobe Ink Monogatari logo. And this one had a boat and then a bottle of blue ink and a fountain pen. I think it's these kinds of items that are going to widen the audience for fountain pens. It kind of draws in the stationery crowd. Nagasawa also sold these templates that had little outlines you could draw of famous things in Kobe and stationery items. But this was an Inkanuma show, and they had all kinds of ink. I did actually buy a bottle of their ink. It's called Kobe Ink Monogatari Kobe University Romanesque Blue. It comes in their standard sailor type bottle. It's a deep blue ink with kind of a pink sheen. There were several glass pen makers there. This is a key item for many of these ladies. I got a glass pen from Paraglass, It's a blue kind of crystal cut glass with an opal in the section. I'll be talking about glass pens in part 2 of Inkanuma next week, and I'll be giving this glass pen away on my Instagram to kind of end this series. If you enjoyed this video on Inkanuma, I'd appreciate a like and a subscribe. And now for a kind of public service announcement. In little over a month, the United States will be having a pretty big election. If you're wondering how you can help as an American citizen and be using your pens, you may want to check out Vote Forward. You basically join up and print out a bunch of form letters. These form letters will have spaces where you can actually write a handwritten note to the recipient. The people that receive these letters will be encouraged to vote in this upcoming election. You're asked not to specify a candidate or a platform, but to encourage the person to vote. It's a pretty interesting way to be using your pens. You may want to check it out.